And we are live right on the dot today with another episode of Maker That Money here on the YouTubes, 9 a.m. Pacific time, most Fridays, except for when we don't. I am Pooch of Repkord, and with me, as always, my trusty partner in crime, Mr. Andrew Mayhall, king of the Empire of Sticky. Andrew, happy Friday to you, my friend.
Happy Friday to you as well.
How you feeling about this week?
I can't believe it's already Friday again, but I say that every time.
We say it every week, and it's true every
Mm-hmm.
week. Um, I feel like it's been a productive, reasonably chaotic week here. A lot of juggling of things. I mean, that is the
Yep.
way as a small business owner. We talk on this podcast about turning your hobby into your jobby. So our lives as makers colliding with our profession and our ability to make the monies, hopefully,
Mm-hmm.
that support us.
Yep.
And the ebbs and flows that come with. That is what we are all about on this podcast. And if you're new or listening back after the fact, we welcome you. If you want to interact with us, you are perfectly welcome to. We try to engage our awesome people in the chat. I want to shout out a couple people that I see, some familiar faces. Miss Karen Chow Designs, always good to see you with us. Mr. Alex Gibson coming in from over the pond. Alex, cheers. Good day. Hello. Good day is Australian, but one of your colonies.
Yeah.
Filament
You stay
Stories,
close enough.
Miss Courtney, howdy to you, and Mr. Mike, never let the machines win, who just followed me on Twitter again. Apparently, I don't know. I thought I was following you. I thought we were following. Maybe he's got a new account. I thought I saw a revision of the logo. Who knows? But happy Friday to all. Hi, Vicky. Good to see you, Vicky. One of the organizers of the show formerly known as ERF, this year to be
Mm-hmm.
called 3D Printopia, one where we both got our start in the
Yep.
events world. We will always be near and dear to us, so it's good to see you
Mm-hmm.
here. All right. You know what I realized as we're kind of getting back into the swing of the podcasting and all of that is that we haven't talked about our wins of the week.
Oh boy.
Oh boy, oh boy. It's something that's we like to embrace that positivity here. We positive
Mm-hmm.
message people, and as such, we like to share at the top. We try to, at least when we remember to
Mm-hmm.
share something that was good that happened for us this week. And Andrew has been thinking because he knows I always put him on the spot. But I'll
Yep.
give you a little longer to think because I'm gonna start here with my win of the week. My win has been just an amazing week for me getting back into some design to do some new CAD work on our next version of our storage box that we work on and a couple of other products and just some general for funsies ideas that I've been putting out there. So trying to up my CAD game a little bit, working on my Fusion. And there was probably no less than 3 Fusion updates, during the week while I did it. I'm kidding, but I'm kind of not. That's the way Fusion rolls sometimes. And I have to say, I know it's one of the things that I don't do that often because it feels like not the most important thing on the list. But when I look at it and the way that I derive energy from it, and it gets me back to my maker roots, it's something that I feel like I undervalue and I need to probably carve out a better swath of time just because it's energizing to me
Sure.
and gets me in a mental state that allows me to do all the other things that I need to do in a more effective manner. So, we talked about this a little bit in the past, but
Mm-hmm.
it is important. This is our, like, should we call it like maker self-care that we should
Yep.
prioritize sometimes, like
Mm-hmm.
whatever gives you the energy to get you through your day so you're doing your things, like give yourself the treats
Yep.
to inspire you to do the things that you don't like taxes. But so if you're following along at home, please feel free to share your win of the week in the chat. That is your assignment. And Andrew is now going to share one or many of his wins because I know he has plenty.
Oh
You're up.
yes.
You're up,
Yes.
buddy. Go.
All right. Well, I think let's go with learning to flex some new muscles on delegation.
Oh, that's a big one.
That is a big one. So, we're it's been a minute, but we've still been going through some ridiculous growth. And it's time that we had new team members here. So trying some things out, having people run certain aspects of the business without my involvement. So, it's been interesting.
It really has, man. And I love this is why I love chatting with you is because it's like it reminds me of my time and my approach and which isn't to say that's the
Hmm.
way to go because we're very different people and have different
Hmm.
approaches and whatnot. And I can appreciate the things that I would have wished I'd done better watching you succeed at them and vice versa.
Yeah.
But we always have a good time chatting about stuff, and I'm excited for the growth in the future at
Hmm.
Gloop because man, you guys are just killing it. You cannot crank out that sauce fast
Yeah.
enough. You open the
There's like
valve,
a
man. Just
5-day waiting. There's a 5-day waiting period right now.
5 day waiting period. Yeah,
Yeah.
the lead time on the gloops. Your gloop is being synthesized as we
Yeah.
speak.
We I mean the other win that kind of goes along with that delegation, is that we work through that queue.
Mhm.
Right now it looks like probably around 2 days, give or take. So that's a pretty sharp improvement for the past couple of weeks. But I have a feeling that the moment that the notice goes down on the website, it's just gonna, floodgates will open and then we'll be right back. So
Yeah. Just it's.
yeah.
I mean, that's the way. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or however you want to. It's never just
Hmm.
like okay, cool, let's smooth sailing now because
Yeah.
really, I mean, at the heart of it, guys, is your ability to problem solve. I mean, that's
Hmm.
probably just a good distillation on life in general. And
Yes.
those who seem to do best are the ones that are able to adapt and to problem solve and to learn the skills required to do so. So,
Hmm.
Vicky dropping a Vonnegut quote on us: "Practicing art, no matter how well or badly, is a way to make your soul grow."
Hmm.
I love that. Now, Kurt Vonnegut Jr. Is the Vonnegut that did Slaughterhouse-5, is that junior or is there a senior?
I'm
I'm not. Is this his
I'm not
son?
sure.
I don't know enough about the Vonnegut family, Vicky, but maybe it's the same guy. But anyway, that's a deep cut. Good afternoon, George White. And let's see, Alex Gibson sharing a win. He said they just finished printing 15,000.
That's a lot of
That's
parts.
3 zeros. Small ABS items. Um, Man, that I just kind of shivered a little bit because printing ABS and then small ABS and
Yeah,
I'd love to hear your tips and tricks for getting the adhesion you needed and the tool sets you used and whatnot. But 15,000 of anything is a lot of something, guys.
that's a lot.
Do you
That's
remember
a lot.
having a realization when you got started with your small business, Andrew, that like you're like, oh, we got 100 orders or whatever you're starting at, and then you
Yeah.
realize like you manually pack 100, and you're like,
So
100 of something is a lot, a
so
thousand of
what
something is a ton, and
what's
15,000
so
is nuts.
cool
Yeah.
is being like up to this point, we didn't really celebrate this, but we just passed 20,000 orders about 2 weeks ago.
Congrats.
And what's crazy is like up to that point, like literally order 20,100, I had shipped virtually every single order.
Yeah.
Like if you ordered a bottle of Gloop, like that came, from me. But what's even weirder to think about is like when we did our original Kickstarter, I think we had 200 orders.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was insane. I had taken a picture on my living room floor, like it just covered everything. And we're doing 200 orders sometimes in a single day,
Yeah.
um, which is crazy.
Well, that's somewhat good foreshadowing for the topic for today because we talk about value propositions and how that changes perspective on what value is, on what a
Hmm.
quantity, a lot of something is. I mean, that's crazy. But 20,000 orders, and the founder, I can just see like other founders that they're just shaking their head like 20,000 is like maybe arguably,
Yeah, it's nothing. So,
19,000 more orders than you should have handled, or some argument. But
yeah,
again, we're small businesses, right? Like
yeah.
the mindset of business growth is like, oh, we want to be working on the business, not in the business. But the truth
Hmm.
is you got to work in the business for a long time, and you're never fully, sometimes you're in, sometimes you're out. Sometimes, so
Hmm.
hopefully, that trend changes over time.
Yeah. No,
Any
absolutely.
plans to do like Willy Wonka golden ticket for the 25,000? Just put it in the Gloop so they pull it out and it's all soggy and it's they
So I would
get a
love
trip
to
to the
do that.
factory.
Like I've actually been noodling on that idea for a minute, like
Yeah.
figuring out how to actually pull that off. We got to move out of my house first.
Oh,
But
you don't want people in your basement like with the free tour of the chocolate factory?
but there's some really cool developments that where I'm kind of keeping close to the vest right now, that we're working on, and that hopefully soon, that could become a reality. So we'll see. But I would love to do the Willy Wonka style, like
Just make sure you have the outfit for it, the hat
yeah.
and the whole thing,
Oh yeah. Oh
purple
yeah.
velvet
I
everything.
mean, it fits right in with our brand, right?
It's so on brand. Honestly, I'm surprised you just haven't your beard hasn't turned purple over the years or something like that. Just like it's
Yeah.
chemically altered. It's not even dyed. It's just like chemically altered from all the gloop
Yes.
fumes.
Yes.
Greetings, Liz. Good to see you. Good morning to you. Good to see you. Alex with a follow up. He printed small hollow cubes, only 4 grams each. You know what, guys? This just goes to show there is money in so many different things. Somebody
Hmm.
somewhere wanted 15,000 small hollow 4 gram ABS cubes. And he did it across 10 printers, 1,000 a day with no part processing. That's what the post processing. That's what I'm talking about,
Hmm.
Alex. Post processing will kill you. That'll
Yep.
kill your margins on print jobs right quick. Right quick.
Labor's expensive.
Labor and maintenance. People ask me all the time when they look at the print farm that I run. They're like, "Wow, you must have a huge electrical bill." I'm like, "The electricity is like the last thing I'm worried about.
Hmm.
It is it's not nothing, but it's practically negligible in the
Oh
overall
yeah.
cost of the production when you look at material maintenance
Hmm.
and labor time,
Yep.
which we do not value nearly enough, which we're going to
Hmm.
talk about in just a
Yep.
little bit. I just keep teasing it because I'm not ready to get there yet, Andrew. Um, I'm feeling particularly caffeinated and a little salty and feisty this morning.
Oh,
So
it's rant
I
time.
thought it would be a good time to get a rant. If you know me, you know that I like to rant from time to time. And I teed up two. It's a twofer because I've been repressing all my rant outlets. So this is my platform for ranting. So buckle up, everybody. You're gonna get two today. The first one is somewhat. We see AI. We see the term AI, Andrew, everywhere these days, right? But but
AI.
but it's so funny because it's like half, if not more, of the examples of it aren't like really
They're not even
AI.
AI. They're
Yeah,
just optimization, or
yeah,
yeah.
image,
A PID
detection.
loop. A PID loop is not AI.
No. It's not. It's I got one of these new PTZ cameras that does image tracking. Where it'll like move around with you, and they're like, "Oh, our new AI camera," and all this stuff, and I'm like, "This is." Image tracking or object tracking is not
Yeah.
new. Uh, I think people, it's like anything. It's like when Glowforge started calling their laser cutter like a 3D printer,
Yeah.
because it was more sexy and just like what like.
Hmm.
And so the rant, of course, is like we market to what is going to get us the most like attention, which
Hmm.
arguably is the purpose of marketing, but it
Hmm.
from a technical standpoint, it's completely deceptive.
Hmm. Yep.
And so we
Yep.
see it with AI because AI is in the zeitgeist and everybody wants to talk about AI. But true AI requires like machine learning and language
Hmm.
models and all kinds of neural networks and things
Hmm.
that are actually like improving itself over time. I don't know. Maybe this little PTZ camera is like taking data, sending it
It
home, and doing
captures
better,
pictures
but
of your faces,
I
and
don't
then
think it
like
is.
recognizes it. No,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's blob tracking
yeah,
or shape tracking.
yeah.
Now,
So,
maybe they train the shape tracking on, a model, maybe, but
like I don't know. Should do we all need to? It's probably not super important right now, but it's like making sure that everybody's like working from a same like definition for the
hmm
sake of like not being misleading, false advertising, all of that stuff. Stakes are low on something like that, but I don't know. What are your feels?
I mean, it's one of those things. I mean, I remember this, when the cloud was big. Everything was cloud. Everything was like, oh yeah, our cloud this, our cloud that. And I mean, then before that, you had the 3D TVs, right?
Yeah,
You remember how big of a bubble that was?
I do. I do. I never got a
Every
3D TV. I just yeah.
everything was like, oh yeah, our 3D technology, 3D cameras, the 3D TVs,
Yeah.
and then it just turned into a big nothing burger, right?
Well, that teased me up perfectly for rant number 2, my friend, which I've like I mean it's such an okay boomer thing, People have heard me complain about this for a while now, but obviously we're seeing the Apple Vision Pro out there, right? And we've
Oh boy.
it's all over social media. It's Glass Hole 2.0. Everybody's got them on. And listen, I am a fan of technology. Okay, I
hmm
love some of the creative applications that we're seeing with VR, AR. Okay, but we've
hmm
been down this road before. At the end of the day, I don't care how cool the applications are, like it's never going to tip mainstream if you don't look like a complete tool walking around with this thing. And then the second part is I really feel like we're at a line in the sand here with a very clear Jurassic Park moment that I like to say is like just because we can doesn't mean that we should. So, yes, like you can have a much more immersive experience and pick up coins while you're vacuuming, gamify your life, and make you more productive and whatnot. But we talk about user interface, we talk about user experience. We don't really talk about social and world experience
hmm
because putting these things on and like giving people more reason to disconnect from interacting with our fellow man is so dystopian. It cannot be the right move
Yeah.
from a benefit of society. What are your feels on that? Right?
I mean, this is interesting because I think having experienced the Vision Pro, I can say that it's really awesome. And I mean, looking at some of those reviews and everything else, like I think what Apple has done is quite frankly incredible. And I think there's some really cool intent in the design language. Like, why did they invest hundreds of thousands of man hours in making a screen that replaces your eyes? Because of exactly what you're talking about. I think that this is the first step in that iteration towards essentially what will be augmented reality. That's what Apple wants, that spatial computing, not virtual reality. It's just we're limited right now by our technology.
Mm-hmm.
So I really think that yes, absolutely. To your credit, just because we can doesn't mean we should.
Mm-hmm.
But also, in order to get to where we want to go, we have to start taking the first steps now. Um,
Well,
you
do
know,
we want to go there though? Because that's where I think the major debate is. And the
I
road.
mean,
I mean, you said
maybe.
their intentions may be good, but the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? Like we
Sure,
know
I
we
could
know
see.
this.
I mean, I could see where a true augmented reality system would, like change the way things are designed, people interact, people do, like future things. Um, is that the right way? I don't know. I can certainly say the weird, like FaceTime, feature functionality that they've implemented is very uncanny, and I don't think that's the solution because now we're like representing ourselves virtually.
I mean,
But
this is. I
you
mean, we're
know
seeing it VTubers. We're seeing like people.
yeah,
It's. I mean, it's classic Ready Player One stuff. For a lot of
yeah,
people, it's escapism, and it is appealing. But I
yeah,
see a segment, and we talked about this off stream earlier. But I mean, like, are we tending towards cyborgs? Like, if we can
yeah,
it seems pretty clear to me that like the addictive behavior of the human, in
Mhm.
general is, well, if I can see better, if I can enhance my life this way, and we don't look at the cost in terms of like our physical
Mhm.
interactions. Arguably, a lot of people of this generation be like, I don't care if I'm connecting virtually or if I need to connect in person. I don't like connecting in person, and I can relate better this way.
Yeah.
I don't think I think there's a lot of unintended consequences as a
Mhm.
result that we're just
Sure.
not thinking out because we're excited at the shiny new, right?
Yeah. Sure. No,
Um,
I hear you.
anyway, that's not what we came to talk about today. But thank you for allowing me that rant. It's going to be interesting to wait and see. But is it a fad? Will it just ultimately go away? Like until it's compact enough where it's unobtrusive. Like
Mhm.
it's you see people walking around. I'm like, I don't want to normalize people walking around with VR headsets on. And it's literally only a matter of time before somebody walks into an open manhole or falls down an elevator shaft with one on or whatever, and then legal regulations have to. People are already driving with them, even though you're not supposed to.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
okay, rant over. Today on the pod, we need to just chapter mark it so people can skip over all the cruft at the head. But today at the pod, we're talking about value proposition, the
Mhm.
ever shifting perceptions of value. Let me tell
Yes.
you, I'll tee up really quick what inspired this for me.
Okay.
So I was on the Twitters as one is, as this guy regularly is, and I saw a post from my good friend Fotis Mint. So this
Mhm.
originally came about in the context of, as a designer, the value that or the lack thereof that companies
Mhm.
oftentimes put on a designer. Companies are constantly trying to just like snake models without permission and use them
Mhm.
for their marketing purposes
Sure.
without compensating the designer,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
An age old thing. I mean, and we've seen articulations of this in creator land as well, where people pull snippets and repost them to
Mhm.
their own social media without crediting the creator. This is an ongoing issue, and
Mhm.
unfortunately, there's just bad actors out there that just don't care. It's
Yep.
it's easy. I mean, ever since stuff could go up onto the internet, there were those that were figuring out how to steal it and use it
Mhm.
and not worry about the ethics of that. Um, the thing that Fotis was saying was he was like, I'm finally creating a tier that if companies want to do this properly, because I get all these emails all the time, like, what do I need to do to use this for my commercial purposes? He created a license. I think it was $200 a month
Mhm.
for commercial usage of his models, which means, as I understand it, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, that you can use it for commercial purposes to print the model, to show it with your printer or whatever, and
Mhm.
that's good. I think that's great. I think
Mhm.
commercial licenses have existed for a period of time. There's still going to be people that are going to cheat and not use that, and the burden of validating that, of course, goes back onto the artist, and that's something that they
Mhm.
probably don't want to spend time hunting down. But at
Sure.
least there's an option for those that want to act ethically and
Mhm.
do it the right way.
Mhm.
Um, of course, the conversation. I think Joel originally drew a lot of attention to it. The 3D printing nerd. He said, "I think this is great. I want to see more people doing that." I agree. I think having the option is never a bad thing.
Mhm.
And then I don't know if it's a debate, but the commentary started in on
Mhm.
how frustrating it is that new designers are. I don't want to say this wrong, but like, and this isn't a shot out at Fotis, but
Mhm.
it's his frustration was around like this problem will always exist as long as there are designers out there that are willing to just like work for peanuts, that are willing
Yep.
to give away models in exchange for a printer or resin or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
And I sat and thought on that for a bit, and then of course I had to comment because that's what I do. Um, but I think that that's the crux of issue in creator land. Whether you're a designer, whether you're a content creator, whether you're a
Mhm.
small business, I can see application to us where the value proposition of like what your art or your product is worth when
Mm-hmm.
you are getting started is inherently lower for multiple reasons,
Mm-hmm.
right? First is that we just don't even, well, one, we don't value ourselves appropriately. We're not accounting for our
Sure.
time. But the bigger thing is like when you're just getting started, you're in this massive bazaar where everybody's just shouting and selling their stuff, and you need attention, you need eyeballs and exposure, right? So you see seasoned creators always talking about how like, look, I can't feed my family on exposure.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back to when they all got started, at some point, I guarantee you they sacrificed something because they knew there was value in that exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't do you any good if people aren't even aware of who you are. And I'd
Yep.
say even like years and years in, like we still see it every day. New people that are new, like, oh, I've never heard of Gloop before. I've never heard of Repbox before and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
there is a I don't know what to call this, but the curve of exposure or awareness in your brand,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
where you are willing, because
Mm-hmm.
of the competitive nature of all the messaging, and you need to be willing to
Yep.
sacrifice some financial gain in order to like just get out in front of people and get known. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a lot. Give me your takes on that origin story.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because when you are getting started,
Yeah,
even if you accept the fact that you're not valuing your time correctly, or you're valuing your time too low, um, you know, it's really hard on creative works to come up with what is the appropriate value for something,
sure.
because there will always be those that argue, I'm not going to pay $15 for a 3D model that I'm going to print and it's going to sit up on a shelf.
Yeah.
But there will be those that will spend hundreds of dollars for said 3D model that they'll do just that. And it's the value that that individual perceives. Perhaps it's very obscure and of some character that this person identifies with, or has emotional attachment to, versus maybe it's a utility thing that you'll be able to use and make money. It just depends, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are that producer consumer demand curves. It's literally what this is.
Yeah.
You got to produce something at X rate, and then there's a demand at Y rate, and where they meet, that's where that value is.
Yeah.
And a lot of it, when I think creators are just getting started, is really figuring it out.
Yeah.
um and there's no right or wrong here. I would argue that in order, as you were talking, in order for these smaller creators to get where they need to be, they had to do the very thing that they are saying, oh, this is an issue.
Yeah.
But the thing is a lot of times we ourselves will kind of actually forget about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And through that whole process, because we've been doing this now for years, it's like,
Right.
oh well, yeah, like I remember when every person that would reach out, hey, can I feature this thing in a video, can I do this, can I get some samples to try,
Mm-hmm.
we would
Mm-hmm.
usually say, okay, yeah, sure.
Right.
Now we're a lot more selective,
Yeah.
but it's the reason why is like, well, we could do it, but it's really not going to do much, and now we're just sacrificing inventory that we have,
Right.
because
Right.
the value for us, when we can't produce enough to actually meet customer demand, like it has more value
Right.
now.
And that's the luxury of success, right? Like when you get
Exactly.
to a certain level, you start, reassessing that value, and it's an ever shifting thing. So, to
Hmm.
answer the question, and this is completely not helpful, but of, well, what is the correct price in a
Hmm.
capitalist society like we live in? It is whatever the market will bear. The
Hmm.
fallacy that we run into a lot of the time is that because you are out in a public space, you are subject to the width of the entire opinion spectrum, where one person's valuation of something is completely different from the others. And you really have to look at what
Hmm.
customers you are trying to target, because
Hmm.
you might be trying to sell to this high end. You're going to get a lot of people being like, I'm not paying for that. And they're like, and you can be like, that's fine. It's not for you.
Hmm.
Or you just ignore those people or whatever. But it's really easy for those people that are bitching and moaning about the price to really
Hmm.
drag you down and make you second guess your value. So I think the first thing is on a regular basis, try to evaluate, like, where do you want to be? Who is your
Mm-hmm.
target market? We don't do
Exactly.
enough analysis of that to begin
Mm-hmm.
with. And that
Yep.
that's probably going to change as you go, right? Like, because
Mm-hmm.
you can't afford to be picky when you're getting started. I was a web developer for 15 years, and at the very beginning, it's just like I needed to get portfolio material together. I wasn't charging. It was
Mm-hmm.
insane how, like, I was giving away my skills, but I was
So
also learning while I was going, right.
mhm. We talk about this in terms of capital, and when you're just getting started, you lack social capital. You
Social
lack that,
capital, baby.
you lack that reputation.
Right.
And you might have technical capital, like you have the ability to design this website. You might be a talented programmer. You might be a chemist who can make adhesives,
Right.
right? But you lack the social capital in
You
order to
haven't
get
proven it yet. So, oh, really?
exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I can say
Yeah,
I'm anything. Prove it.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so over time, those, now you're basically moving, capital from one bucket to another, or ideally you're growing both at the same time,
Right.
or all of these buckets.
Right.
But there's some exchange of energy there,
Yeah.
exchange of momentum. And then as you were saying, identifying what your target market is, identifying the direction that you're heading. And that's going to change, and it's going to constantly change.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One thing that might be like, here's something that's interesting, like that I noticed specifically with Fotis. Not to pick on Fotis here,
Let's
but
pick
it
on
was
Fotis. Fotis, we're coming for you.
one thing that I thought was interesting was is I saw that same tweet, and then I also saw, I think, a tweet a couple of days or a little bit later where he was looking for another designer,
Mm-hmm.
and like he was gonna do freelance or pay, and like what sparked the thought immediately in my head is like, well, that's interesting. Like, I'm supporting Fotis because it's Fotis. The
Uh-huh.
moment that other designers come in,
Yeah.
like, and doing other things, that's no longer the value that I was originally buying into. Not saying that it's not something of interest,
Right. Right. Right.
but
Right.
this is where that shift happens.
Yeah.
And so, perhaps again, Foda sees an opportunity here where he can grow, and he can have multiple designs. He can support this,
Yeah, he's
design
creating a
team.
design studio, which is really cool. Like,
Exactly.
that is growth of that business.
It-
But you're
but
right. You may lose some
but
customers as a result. Yeah.
exactly. It's like is that are people buying because it's Fotis,
Mm-hmm.
or are they buying just because of the designs?
Right.
Now you could have the same thing where it's like the quality of design, and so that's where that value, it kind of shifts. Instead of it being Fotis now that was designing it, which is known for these really high quality, super detailed models,
Yep.
it's this design studio
Yep.
that always produces these things, so it doesn't matter if it's Fotis or not.
Yeah.
And so this is where that perceived value shifts.
Yeah. Yeah.
In understanding, do your customers actually want that or not?
Right.
You know,
And that
um,
that may change over time, and you have to be okay with that.
mhm.
I want to pull up something here really quick that Mike never
Sure.
let the machines wins in the comments points out. He talks about this sounds like people that are selling prints on Etsy, 3D prints on Etsy for $5 that has $10 in plastic in it. So in the industry, we would refer to this potentially as a loss leader
Yeah.
if
I mean,
it were being used with the intention of just to gain exposure. I think that's also referred to as just bad maths
yeah, I was
and
gonna
poor
say this is
business.
just bad business.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
just let them keep doing that; it will sort itself out.
That's exactly right, right? But
Uh,
you draw a good point that
yeah.
as we do this over time, like, if you are serious about turning your hobby into your jobby, about making a run of it, it has to be sustainable. You don't do
Mhm.
anyone any good if you burn yourself out on what
Yeah.
you're working on. And sometimes it just, people have to learn that lesson. They're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm breaking even. Like, I'm not getting anywhere by
Mhm.
selling my models for just even the cost of the filament, because I'm not paying myself.
Exactly. Now, I
Right.
mean, I would say this is an unlikely situation, but something that I have done, and I'm actually doing a lot more of, is actually focusing on developing these skill sets, or developing these like these muscles that I haven't ever flexed, and in doing so, the the thing that I'm getting out of it
flex.
is the actual process.
Yeah.
I don't actually care about the end result. And so, perhaps again, in these situations where a designer is just getting started, they are flexing their new design muscles. They don't really care about how many people are interested. They
Hmm.
don't care about how much money that they're making from
Right.
this because they have a day job that's supporting them.
Right.
The end goal might be, yeah, I would love to do this full time.
Right.
But it could be something where it's I'm learning. I am trying to develop these skills and hone them so that when the time comes, it makes more sense for me to be able to leverage this new technical capital that I've been investing
Yeah.
in, you know.
And we see
So,
compromise like that all of the time, right? Like
mhm,
if it's something you're interested in, we've seen creators that charge like tens of thousands of dollars for, videos and sponsored
mhm,
content, like do something for free because they're just passionate and excited to do
mhm.
it.
Yep.
And so, that's something to think about too when you're soliciting. Like, what is the value proposition here? Like, getting some better understanding of what motivates your
Mhm.
customers and your vendors. A lot of the time, will serve you quite well in terms of getting the best value return back to you. I think the challenge, and there's a lot of little interesting stuff to unwrap here, but one of the things the commentary like led toward on the photos tweet was you have this like designer on designer animosity where the senior crowd, and it's the same thing with I've seen this time and
Mhm.
time again with content creators as well. Like they get frustrated at the noobs that come in that are trying to make a name for themselves that diminish the value of what they
Mhm.
do, because as long as those people exist, there will always be companies out there that are going to try to like get away with like spending as little as possible.
Sure.
And that quality distinction isn't necessarily always clear in the world, especially of art.
Mhm.
There's some really, really talented artists out there that are willing to like give away some really top quality stuff just because it needs to get seen. So
Mhm.
how do these two things coexist, and how do artists support each other? Or is it more like I don't want the competition. I don't want you in here, and stop messing with my, taking
I,
food off my plate. I don't think that's what's being said, but
I
I just,
think I think where really what it comes down to is that these are frustration points, but when they my suggestion would be for these creators, hypothetical creators.
yeah.
We're not talking about anyone specific here, but to sit down and actually think through what value they are bringing to the table,
Mm-hmm.
because fundamentally, right? If for instance they feel that the only value they're bringing is like the designs or the models that they're producing, and
Mm-hmm.
someone can do the same thing and people don't see any difference
Mm-hmm.
in that same thing for cheaper, then is that indicative of, hey, you actually have a too high of a perceived value on yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe this isn't the route that you need to go down? Or
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
it that you actually need to focus on other areas, like let's say for instance a YouTube creator? Eventually they might build an audience, a platform, and that platform is very loyal and following and engaging, all of these things. Now, people, when they're just getting started, they might do a whole review on a printer if they just get the printer for free.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, okay, fine. But now my argument to them is just like, does that actually make sense for you to even do? Because is your audience even now interested in those things?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Your value to other companies
Mm-hmm.
is that audience. So
Mm-hmm.
try and leverage that audience in a different way that's more meaningful, that demands the value that you're wanting.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Well, and
it's yeah.
arguably,
Go
like
ahead.
you said, these are things that ultimately sort themselves out. We don't see nearly as many people doing reviews anymore because, like, the
Hmm.
market has kind of moved away from the value of that and how much time
Sure.
and energy that it takes to create it. So, a true capitalist would say, well, this will all sort itself out in the end, but it's, at what cost? People burning out, suffering, like,
Hmm.
it's not useful as the creator, as the business owner,
Yeah.
to just be like, well, those who succeed will succeed, and those who don't. Um,
Yeah.
but one other interesting thing of note I would want to point out was seeing more of these corporate licenses and stuff
Hmm.
coming into play. Reminds me of the tendency to focus more on B2B business to
Hmm.
business.
Yep.
Uh, the successful, sustainable companies over time will, at the very least, carve out a swath of their business to focus more on selling to other businesses rather than direct to consumer. One,
Hmm.
because they're arguably a better customer in a lot of regards. The,
Businesses are better customers than
that
consumers,
that well
hands
they
down.
yeah, because they can they have empathy around that thing,
Yeah.
and it's there's just different
Hmm.
and they want to buy in volume a lot of times, so you're way more likely to make some concessions sometimes when you know that there's an order for 15,000 of something than just like one
Hmm.
of something.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see the artist application of this, where it's like you your point, you might sour a lot of your customers that want to support you on a single basis, but they only have $5 a month to contribute.
Hmm. Exactly.
That's worth you know
Hmm. Well, and so
40
so to pick on Fotis here again is he's actually done something really well. He's actually realized that his value is in these creations that he's building,
Bing.
and
Yep.
that companies want to show these off in marketing and promotional materials. And so while he might lament it at the other guys that are producing these things and don't care if a company uses it, the thing is like there's value in what Fotis has been building. He's
Right.
built this reputation, he's built this social capital, and so now he's shifting that over. And in order to continue developing that, that's where he builds a design studio where he's
Mm-hmm.
having other people
Mm-hmm.
working with him.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is where it starts to really get layered in,
Yeah.
and can actually change the whole direction
Yeah.
of the company. It's not even the same thing anymore,
Yeah.
you know.
Well, I'm excited because I think he's setting a good precedent. I hope to see more, and hopefully it raises the bar, for
Hmm.
everyone. I would just say that there's not a reason that you can't do both. I think you can do a
Oh,
business focus, and,
absolutely.
and, and that's what he's doing. He's got tiers for customers and stuff, and that even if he's
Hmm.
building a studio, I mean, he's been working with Britt and Charo and a team for a little while
Hmm.
now. But the idea is like his brand, his vision, the type of product they work on, like is very much represented in that. And so
Absolutely.
I don't think that just because he's layering on new artists and creating something that sustains other people's livelihood as well
Hmm.
means that you're not supporting him or
Hmm.
the core aesthetic that is the Photos Mint
Oh,
design stuff.
100%. And I was using Photos as a mechanism
I
for
know.
discussing these things.
Yeah, no, no, I totally understand. In the product world, this is interesting too because I think arguably this is, people that are making stuff here in the states, like you and I,
Hmm.
our frustrations with China and how they just drive the value
Hmm.
perception for pricing of things. Like people don't want to pay any more than they have to, and
Yeah.
then they bitch and moan that they get no support and the quality's terrible and all this stuff. And so like there's this constant like ebbing and flowing. And just because something is made in the United States too does not mean that it is a better quality or that you're getting better
Hmm.
customer service either. But we just cannot compete on a sheer volume of
Hmm.
manufacturing capacity with the machine that is China.
Yep.
And so it is frustrating when you're trying to get your start here, where you're always going to have customers that won't pay attention to you because you can't come anywhere near the pricing that they can get in China, even if it's for
Sure.
inferior product, right? So
Yeah.
we see these frustrations across multiple business applications and whatnot. What
Hmm.
is what is your advice as a product to mitigate that?
I mean, yeah, as a product that has a million other competitors in the sense of generic adhesives that are oftentimes fractions of the cost
Yeah,
of what we can produce it for.
super glue. Why don't I
Exactly.
just use super glue, crazy glue, whatever you want to call
Yeah,
it,
the
CA glue?
value proposition comes down to the usability and the amount of effort we put into the research and development and design of our products.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason why it costs so much.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also the reason why people are willing to pay for it, because when it comes down to it, when you use Gloop, it's unlike any other adhesive out there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, yes, I have to convince you to try it.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've tried it,
Try my
most of the
glue.
time, exactly, most of the time you're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Pun intended there, right?
Ha ha! Heyo.
um So I think it really comes down to being very intentional about those value propositions. Like
Hmm.
when I got started, I knew there was no way I could compete on price
Hmm.
with a 3M, DuPont, or Hinkle, Loctite, you name it.
Right.
No way.
Right.
These guys are behemoths. They can produce it in
Right.
such a volume. They're, so what did I have to do? I had to spend a lot more time and effort building a brand,
Hmm.
building a reputation around said brand, instilling a lot of that value, the usability characteristics in the product itself. So it was very, very targeted.
Well, not
And so
just
I
that,
think,
but you honed in on an application that wasn't really
mhm,
being focused on in an industry that is just going through massive growth, and
yep,
it's perfect. I mean, the reason we've been simpaticos is like it's just perfect Levi Strauss model. I talk about this sometimes
yep,
that you don't want to go in as a gold miner. You want to go sell jeans and picks and shovels to the gold miners, right? So
yep,
you're in the right place at the right time with an application that nobody else is focused on. So you may even have a less successful product, but if you're in the right community saying,
hmm,
given the message like, hey, this is great for 3D print adhesion,
hmm,
that's good. And then you draw the point too that it's, yeah, sure, Loctite or any of the giants like could come out tomorrow with something
hmm,
that wanted to compete, but like, is that worth it for them versus like,
hmm,
hopefully maybe you're primed for a good acquisition at some point because it's more convenient for them to just snag you up than it is
hmm.
to create a new formulation on their own for 3D printing adhesives.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I will say, hands down, there are some things that Gloop doesn't do very well
Mm-hmm.
that another adhesive will.
Mm-hmm.
Like bonding dissimilar materials together, you have to have two different versions of Gloop to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas another adhesive, oh, it's just a single one. That's because, again, there was trade-offs here.
Yeah.
That's not to say that at some point I can't focus on developing a new formulation that does that better.
Right.
But, again, it all comes down to having to be very intentional. Right now, I don't have enough social capital. I mean, yeah, you could say, oh, Gloop is doing great. Like, this is the time to start expanding product lines. And I would say, no, this is
Mm-hmm.
not the time. This is absolutely the worst time to expand the product line. It might be a good time to add other things like merchandise that continue to build the brand,
Mm-hmm.
but certainly no other products that are beyond what the scope is, because we are now in a swing where we can really develop the brand further. Again,
Mm-hmm.
very intentional here. You know.
I would love to see data on some products out there that have been around in the same formulation for, decades and decades and decades. Yeah, Coca-Cola or whatever. I mean, now
Hmm,
clearly Coca-Cola has become like a bottling company and like and then acquired all kinds of other types of soda. But like,
hmm,
how long, were they just focused on that one product and doing it well? Because like you've got a lot of road ahead of you, even if you were just to like make
hmm.
PLA Gloop alone, right? Like the
Yep.
amount of growth in the industry and the amount of filament that's being sold and printed on a daily basis and whatnot is just going through hockey stick growth right now.
Hmm,
And having that focus. I mean, we talk about focus all the time and whatnot. Growing,
hmm.
it is really intensive to go wide
Yep.
as compared it is to like scale up, right? So like
Hmm,
automating, like let's keep this thing flowing. But as makers,
hmm.
we want to go wide because it's like, oh, but I want to make one that does this and I want to do this, and because you're constantly
Yep.
getting feedback from people going like, but when nylon,
When's this?
when
When's this?
this, like
When's the
when can I do
TPU?
this? When
When's
I
the
can do
spray? When's
acrylic?
the Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Bigger brushes, smaller brushes. So you're flooded with just tons of
Hmm.
ideas,
Yep.
and that can lead to like a death of 1,000 paper cuts to you. I would
Yeah.
argue like I suffered that, um, and I didn't even I started reselling and doling out
Hmm,
cash to all kinds of interesting things because I
hmm.
wanted to have more offerings and I was
Yep.
chasing down that feedback and that I burned out.
Released. It's something that we make. Was in 2019.
Yeah.
It's been
Yep.
5 years since we've actually released anything new. It's the same stuff. I mean, yes, formulas have changed, things have revised. Now, we released a beaker mug, but that's a marketing piece that we don't make. It was, something that helps build the brand reputation, the brand value. Yeah, it comes back to being so intentional on all of the things you're doing, and that focus. I think that that's where the value comes in. is in the business owner, or the CEO or the director of the company, understanding what value their physical products are bringing their customers and really focusing in on those things.
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
and not losing sight, because at the end of the day, like, that's why your customers are here supporting you
Yeah.
you know
I'm realizing Fotis is in the chat now. I think his ears were burning because we were talking about him, and I'm realizing we
yeah.
need a better mechanism for just like impromptu, like, well, let's get him in here. I wanna see what his thoughts are. Fotis, if you missed it, I don't know if you saw, you inspired this episode somewhat from your tweet earlier, with your corporate level tier, and we're just our discussion around value, and when you're getting started as an artist or as a business looking for exposure versus once you become a
Hmm.
seasoned grizzled veteran like yourself, where you want to be sustainable and you want to be able to have a team and to pay those people and to make a living of this, and those are very different things, and it's easy, and we picked on you a little bit, even though we're all love for you. The challenge where there's new artists coming in and obviously are gonna diminish the value by being willing to give away their stuff for basically nothing because they want that exposure. So
Hmm.
we just, I think it's just a really interesting topic to talk about, the shifting value proposition and whatnot. So we covered a lot of ground in terms of a couple different business applications, right? Whether you're a
Hmm.
designer, I think Andrew Rogers drew a good point in the chat too. It's probably particularly hard when you're an artist because
Hmm.
there's I don't know what to call it, but like obviously artists, like the ones that believe that are true artists, like shouldn't be doing it for the money. It should be about the work and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And so this terrible
Yeah.
relationship between money and sustainability, and like an artist who wants to be just doing it for the sake of art,
Hmm.
not actually running a business, and that's a challenge. But you don't do anybody any good if you can't support yourself, if you're not going to be around to talk about
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
what's the right compromise? I don't know. I don't know. Man, the other the other interesting thing, when I was teasing it in the promo, I think when people look at value proposition, a lot of the time we think about, as consumers, what are we willing to pay for
Hmm.
things. Um,
Yep.
Joel Telling, the 3D printing nerd, had a great review of the Prusa XL I think it was like a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
he talks about the price point of the tool changer
Hmm.
XL, and he's like, I think that this makes sense right now because there is really nothing else like it on the market. So
Yep.
they're getting a lot of shade. Prusa is getting a lot of shade basically because everybody's like, it's too expensive. Why would I want to pay this much? And they're
Hmm.
looking at spec. They're like, oh, it's just a big printer, and I'm like, no, it's
Hmm.
actually a big printer that you can get and then upgrade if you want, or you can
That's
buy with tool
exactly why I got
kit.
mine.
Right.
You
It's
know,
you're
the
you're investing in
value.
the
Yeah.
ecosystem. Will it
Yep.
always be worth the 4,000? That it is now. Probably not. Competition tends to drive
Hmm.
prices down, which is good for consumers, and it's good for making sure that companies don't get lethargic in their development and stay competitive and
Hmm.
whatnot. But uh, hold on a second, my headphones just kicked off.
Oh no.
I'm not sure why. May have to hardwire here. Bear with me. The transmitter battery died. Stand by, please. Andrew, talk about the value perception changing over time for product based on
Yeah.
competitive.
Yeah, so I mean, Pooch was talking about the XL, and for example, the reason why I bought the XL was really just for the ability to upgrade it over time. I had a larger, it would give me access to a larger format build platform. It would allow me to experiment with multi material the moment that I was ready to do so. Yeah, it was expensive, but there, as Joel was talking about, there was nothing like it on the market, and so that's that value there. It could demand that higher price. I think also, again, where it comes back home for like products that we develop, uh, the value is in the y- you know the aspects that we are inventing into and developing further on our adhesives. And there is nothing out there that's quite like Gloop. Uh, can it demand a higher price than what it is? I have no idea. I hope not. I mean, I feel like it's very expensive. But for us, the value that I am trying to figure out for the general consumer again comes back down to uh, what problems that they have or what problems they might have and how do you actually solve them. For example, again tying it back to the XL, printing in multiple different materials has always been difficult.
Hmm.
They had the MMU that could sort of do it as well, but there was some issues there. A system like the AMS for a Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon or similar,
Hmm.
it can print multicolor, but multi-material gets even a little bit more confusing too. Um,
Sure,
you know,
and it's wasteful, and there's it's always about trade offs with any product, right? And that
hmm
evolution over time is always an
yeah.
interesting thing to watch. Um, in the chat, let us know what's an example of something that maybe you value more than another, or where you think your value proposition is in the minority. Because I think there's a lot of people that are willing to pay. I keep bringing up my web developer history, but it was like there was every once in a while I would come across. It seemed like there were two camps. There are people that believe a website should be able to be made for basically like pizza and beer, and then it was completely black magic, and it must be super expensive, and it's daunting. It requires coding and all of this stuff, and
hmm
the truth is it's probably a bell curve, but as a somebody that's selling a service or a product, it's like, yeah, you want to focus on like where can I maximize. I want people that are willing to pay me as much as possible
hmm
for the basically the same amount of work, right?
hmm
But obviously there's less of them, those opportunities don't come along as well, and then there's the opportunity cost of like you don't want to be tied up on a low value job when
Yep.
somebody comes knocking at your door with a lot of money, and
hmm
and and you can't reputationally just kick that person to the curb. So that's an interesting challenge of like a service based business versus a product
hmm
one. Like I was constantly frustrated by that process of having to bid things that didn't turn out,
The,
that
the
didn't
the
pan
time to
out.
bid it, even
The time to bid
like
it, the
yeah.
missing opportunities just because I wasn't available that could have like led to some other big thing. Ultimately, I
hmm
was like hired on because somebody liked working with me so much they wanted to retain me. They're like, look, we'll just buy all your hours. But that was a luxury of doing it over time for a period. Like I wouldn't have been hired like that,
hmm
and so again, you got to build that rep up. Hey,
Yeah.
value there, is such an amorphous thing and a challenge depending on who you are and what your time is worth, what your money, how much money you have. Obviously, a
hmm
lot of factors go into it.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Alex in the chat says the value of Gloop is your 1 month cosplay product is not falling apart in the middle of Comic Con. Sure,
Yep.
sure, that's a good value proposition.
hmm
Fotis, let me see what Fotis said. He says, let's see. He created the tier for the Hey Dear people out there, so you could just have something to point to. But you know what, Fotis,
hmm
somebody's going to take advantage if they haven't already. Uh,
hmm
Take advantage of it. If a company that wants to be ethical takes advantage of that, and you get a 200 month subscription, then good for you. I think it'll
hmm
happen. I think it'll happen. I think there's plenty of companies out there that want to do right by artists, and
it's
that's good.
interesting because this could be a whole topic on its own as well.
Timestamp it because we always looking for more ideas.
Yeah, yeah. The is all of the new challenges that 3D printing and just in general, of this artistic design of 3D models is going to cause for intellectual property and copyrights. Because one would argue that Fotis owns the copyright to the creation because he created it. It's an original creation.
Yeah.
But another would argue that I could go buy something off the shelf being a sculpture and I can use that in any sort of promotional video that I want without having to pay any sort of license fees to the person who designed it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I mean it's interesting, not saying that that's right, but there's going to be so many new challenges that just 3D printing in general is going to continue to bring up in terms of intellectual property
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
and copyright and everything.
And
You know,
that's a lot to debate here. You're right. That
it
is
is.
its own
It
that's
is
its own thing. And
its own thing.
I think
You
some
know.
of it, to be fair, too, it's like the internet loves to look at, talk about these things like it's always with malice intent. But I think a lot of it is just
Hmm.
there are genuinely people that just don't know or didn't
Hmm.
think about it, right? Like, I don't think that it's always with nefarious purposes. Um, you know,
Hmm.
whatever. I'm not trying to defend large
Oh,
companies and stuff, but
yeah.
like clearly some of the times like this has to be somebody in the marketing department that was literally just tasked with, look, we need a shot of the printer in action, and they just like grabbed a model, printed it, not thinking really anything of
Hmm.
it, and then they,
Yeah.
the company's like, why are we getting flamed for this? Well, this is hopefully lessons learned as these things evolve over
Hmm.
time. Well, my friend, we have done a solid 60. This has been a really great chat as always. I want to thank everybody that
Yeah.
joined us in the chat today, feeding us great questions and commentary. Um, it's likely something that we will talk about far into the future. Value, setting pricing, all of these things. I think the parting thought that I would leave is whenever you're getting started, when you're thinking about your pricing, take what you come to and add 20%, 30%, 50%, I don't know, but it's going to be more than you think, and be
Yeah.
honest with yourself about your time, and then
Hmm.
you can always discount, right? Like there's ways to go about like trying to promote and to use that
Hmm.
stuff, but without necessarily completely destroying the value, because it's a
Hmm.
lot harder to like justify increasing your prices and stuff than it is to like make people feel like they're getting hooked up with a deal.
Hmm.
So just try to think about sustainability, think about what your goals are. If you're truly serious about being in it for the long haul, um, you know be a little
Yep.
less reactive, a little more thoughtful in terms of like how much it actually takes. Go beyond just the bill of materials on what you're doing,
Hmm.
because as you start to grow that team, whether you're Fotis or Andrew or myself,
Yep.
you're going to realize that your overhead is going to go up almost exponentially, and you need to factor that into your cost,
Yep.
because now you're not just having to pay for yourself, but a team of people and all the
Hmm.
insurance and the extra things that come along with just having more. Um,
Yep.
so do a little planning, thinking ahead, writing down thoughts, brainstorming, always good. What are your parting thoughts, Mr. Andrew?
I mean, yeah, you wrapped it up very, very beautifully there.
Thank
I
you.
think
Thank you.
as we always say, as being an entrepreneur, it always starts with writing down your thoughts. I think, thinking through what it is that you want out of this venture that you're going through,
Mindfulness.
what your goal is.
Yeah. Get
Because
zen.
if you don't have that, then it's just an idea, and if you just blindly start executing on the idea, who knows where you're going to end up.
Yep.
So,
Well said. Everybody, happiest of Fridays. I hope you do something joyful, something fun over the weekend. Get yourself centered. Uh, don't forget to do things that energize you, even if they don't feel like they bring an immediate value to your business, because you operating as a happy, healthy individual is very critical to the process as well.
mhm.
I am Alan Puccinelli, aka Pooch of Repkord, and with my friend Mr. Andrew Mayhall of Gloop. This has been Maker That Money, the podcast where we talk about turning your hobby into your jobby, putting another episode in the can. And we will hopefully catch you next week. I think next week. What's the travel schedule like? Possibly next week.
Not sure.
Stay tuned.
Possibly next week.
Follow us on follow Maker That Money at Maker That Money on Twitter for the latest about the schedule. But if we're around and we can pull it off, we'll do next Friday. If not, another Friday soon. Until then, ta ta, everybody. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.
See ya.